Hey. All right. We're going to be waiting a few minutes for people to come in. And okay, here's viewers right here. Just bear with me because this is going to be, this is our first time on this platform. So, yeah, any technical difficulties or anything like that, just bear with me. Can y'all hear me good while we're waiting on everybody to come in? All right, I'm excited. All right, cool. All right, so yeah, we're gonna be, same thing like always. We're gonna be waiting a few minutes for everyone to jump in before we start. Um, but how have y'all been? I'm so excited. I'm like really feeling rejuvenated, just ready to like just really pour into the group, pour into everybody. So I appreciate y'all for sticking around, to say the least, right? Um, and yeah, I'm excited to just get started. Um, and damn, what else I want to say to y'all? I feel like I haven't talked. Well, not feel like I haven't. I haven't spoken to y'all in a minute. So yeah, I hope y'all been good. Yes. So yes, we're going to start at 8:05. All right, we're going to start at 8:05 to give everybody a moment to jump in, and then we're going to just jump right into tonight's class. So just to give y'all a little bit of a background before we begin, while we continue to wait for everybody to come in. All right, so the purpose of this class. So it's very important that you all have a very thorough understanding of the history of Kimbanda. So you have not just Pombagira and Eshu, which we are also going to get into within the next, pretty much after we discuss the history. Um, so not just an understanding of them, but also an understanding of Kimbanda. So as you have noticed a lot in a lot of the previous classes, we have been discussing mostly Pombagira, mostly different elements of Pombagira and um, how to connect with her, how to work with her, and different rituals of things that are beneficial, but still in a lot of ways more surface level, things of like attraction, money, etc. We will definitely still be exploring those aspects as well, but I want to give you all real information, real scholarly information in regards to Kimbanda, in regards to the practice of Kimbanda and how Pombagira and Eshu fits into the practice, as well as a thorough understanding of what the practice is, what it isn't, okay? So that when we are going into these advanced rituals and discussing different elements of Kimbanda and just basically giving all of y'all the real information and the real knowledge that I know that y'all have been wanting and y'all have been sticking around for. You know what it is and you have a foundation on what it is that you're practicing. Okay, so this is a very scholarly mini series on what Kimbanda is. And in order to understand what Kimbanda is, we have to understand the history. All right. Um, Now let's see. Sorry, I was getting a notification on Discord. All right, so we're gonna just jump right into everything. All right, and let me just find a nice little. I'm sorry, y'all. I gotta have some type of like little background because again, this is my first time talking to y'all on this platform, and I'm used to getting feedback on you on Zoom. So I just need a little bit of background music just to kind of chill the vibes out a little bit. We're going to go with this. All right. Okay. So, like I said, in order to understand what Quimbanda is, we have to go into the history of Quimbanda. And in order to do that, we have to go into the history of not only Brazil, but the history of really the world history, and understanding the slave trade, how that impacted the Americas. Okay, and when I say the Americas, I'm not just talking about the United States, but I'm talking about all of the Americas, all of the Western, as well as the Western Hemisphere, and how it has become a combination of different practices over time that have evolved into a new form, what then became known as Kimbanda. All right. So until about 1500, the continent of Africa was known as a major world hub. It was known for commercial routes, as far as trading, as far as, when I say trading, I mean trading goods, trading knowledge, trading cultures. It was a major cultural and commercial pit stop, for lack of a better phrase. Okay. And with that, obviously, came Europeans that wanted to come and use those who were not able to properly defend themselves against certain technology that Europeans had, as far as guns, etc., in order to, use them for labor to get rich, right? So now, the first thing that we have is Portugal. Okay, Portugal enters Brazil around, I believe it's in the year 1500. Okay, so Portugal enters Brazil in 1500, and they begin to enslave the indigenous culture, the indigenous people there. All right. So they do that again, as Africa is still being known as this world hub where they are constantly doing commercial and cultural trade. In 1520, this is when the slave trade begins. And the slave trade to Brazil is roughly from like 1520 to around 1900. All right. So now keep in mind that during this time, you have, during this time, especially this first voyage, you have around 8 million people that are on the ocean route to the Americas. From those 8 million people, half of them died along the route to the Americas. Okay. So after you have this group of people that are being enslaved, right? And they are traveling across the ocean. Half of them die. And now you have 4 million people. So from those 4 million people, about 2 million people are put into Brazil. And the rest of the 2 million are spread across the rest of the Americas, as well as the Caribbean, and what have you. All right. So from there, you now have 2 million people that are in Brazil. And from that 2 million, it is now a huge cultural shift, right? But the huge cultural shift doesn't necessarily happen right away, because remember, you have the indigenous people there. You also have the Portuguese that are there. And now you have 2 million people that have just crossed the ocean into Brazil specifically. All right. Before I go any further, does that make sense? Now, as far as the numbers and all of that, we can discuss that in the group chat and Discord, but I just want to make sure that makes sense and y'all are following along with the story of the history that I'm building, so that it's going to all tie in at the end of this. So, okay, cool. All right. So you have 2 million people that are in Brazil. Okay. So now for that 2 million, for the first 200 years, roughly, you have a biotype. So that biotype and that culture that is mainly being imported into Brazil are the Bantu people, which typically comes from Southern Africa. So not South Africa, but Southern Africa. So countries along Southern Africa. I mean, the countries along Africa, the southern countries around Africa, as well as Angola. So Angola specifically, and then the surrounding countries, around the southern African continent. So, and the reason why they are choosing these people is because they have a very muscular frame, typically. This culture has a very muscular frame, a very muscular biotype. So, right now, we have slave labor that is in the country. So they're in the country, they're in the fields, they're mainly doing like sugarcane and things of that nature, and they need a lot of muscle in order to produce that raw forced labor. So this is why they're the main group that they are sending over to Brazil. So with this, now we have the introduction of Bantu. All right. So now, if we go just briefly into two people have what is called ancestral cults in their belief system. Okay. So the ancestral cult is basically the veneration and the worship of ancestors, family and ancestors. And they also have what is called nature forces or forces of nature. Okay. So when I say nature forces, I'm referring to literally like the sky, the ocean, the river, the forest, forces of nature. And they refer to those forces of nature as Vodun or the Inkisi. Okay, and that is a cult as well. So you have the ancestral cult as well as the Vodun and Inkisi cult that is now being introduced to Brazil through the Bantu people and the importation of enslaved people from the Bantu culture, which is coming from Angola and those southern African countries into Brazil. So now this is where we first get into the fundamental point of what later becomes Quimbanda in Brazil, as well as Candomblé, as well as in the Caribbean and other parts of the Americas, what then becomes like Vodun or Voodoo in Haiti, or Santeria, or Palomayombe, etc. Okay, so this is kind of like that first introduction into those different practices. And don't worry, as far as the different practice, all of that stuff is going to be broken down. All right. So now you have the Bantu people that are coming to Brazil. And what they begin doing, because remember now, we're talking about a 200-year time period of those enslaved there, along with the indigenous Brazilian people, is that is they continue or they begin to culturally trade. So with that cultural trade begins the trade and the evolution of the spiritual understanding and the spiritual knowledge between these groups of people. Okay. Um, and coming up with resources and ways to almost in a sense create a evolved spiritual system that can survive the what's the word I'm looking for that can survive um, the colonization from Portugal. Okay, so this is the first 200 years. Okay, so now, okay, after the first 200 years, as the slave trade expands, right? Because we're first now in the countryside. So now we begin to move from the countryside into the cities, more into the cities of Brazil, as Brazil itself is evolving as far as different cities and towns, etc. So it's a slave trade. So now there is a migration that is happening from the countryside as well as from the countryside to the city. Okay. And with that, and I will say with that, as well as I want to add, okay, that the level of brutality is very, very severe. Um, and there's probably not even a word, in English that can really describe the level of brutality that's happening. So, as much as they're bringing in these people, they're dying because the Portuguese settlers that are there are so brutal in how they are working and beating and killing these people, because they're looking at these people as just like, okay, boom, a commodity. All right, somebody dies, we're just gonna go get more, more, more. So they're not really taking care to even preserve the lives at all. And of course, as you all know from history and school and things like that, that is the case with slavery throughout the world. However, we have to understand that there are certain places that were noted as being much more brutal than others. Okay. And like along with Haiti, how that land was savaged, the same thing with Brazil as far as the brutality, etc. Okay. Make sense so far? Just making sure y'all still following me. I'll wait. Okay, cool. I just want to make sure y'all still follow me. So during this migration period, okay, it's not only a migration period as far as the different work that is now needed, because now we're evolving into the cities versus the countryside, but it is also the amount of people that are also dying because of the brutality of slavery from the Portuguese. Okay. So now what begins to happen after this 200-year period, and we're moving into the cities, is now we start to incorporate what is called then and now as the Yoruba people. Okay. So now they have a more slimmer biotype, and they are now beginning to be exported more, and primarily because as the migration happens from the city, we are now moving from a lot of hard forced labor that requires more muscle to labor that is more in-house. Okay, so now we're kind of moving from like the countryside, outdoors, etc., and now we're moving to expand into things that don't necessarily require more muscles. Okay, uh, the best example that I can think in my head is like house slaves. All right. So they are now brought in from 1700 to 1900. So these are like the last 200 years of the slave period in Brazil. So now as they are brought in, okay, again, we have to talk about their culture now. All right. So again, they have the more slim biotype, the more slim frame that is, more needed for the type of work that they're doing. And now they have cultural beliefs and systems as well. So and again, as far as where they're being taken from, now they are exporting people from again primarily Nigeria, but Nigeria as well as different surrounding countries in more northern Africa. Okay. So they have an ancestral cult as well. Now, the difference between the Bantu people, remember, the Bantu people have an ancestral cult that is mainly focused on family and ancestors. All right. The Yoruba people, while very similar in their ancestral cult, they have an ancestral cult that is more focused on honorable ancestors. So, what does that mean? Honorable ancestors is ancestors or people that have been alive that are now being venerated that were more notable in society. So they're not just honoring any ancestor. You have to be someone who has done something for society or in their society or culture on a more broad scale, or just more popular, if that makes sense. And those ancestors are then venerated. So they have which is why it's called the honorable ancestral cult. Okay, so you have that, and then you also have their forces of nature, which they refer to as orishas. Okay, so again, speaking on the energies of again, like the sky, the ocean, the river, the forest, etc. Okay, they refer to those forces, those energetic forces, as orisha, versus the Bantu people, who refer to those energetic forces as, again, vodun or nkisi. So you have that now being brought into Brazil. And during this, again, at the same time now, it's been 200 years already. So there's already a mix that has happened. It's already a mix that's happened where you have the indigenous people of Brazil and their belief system, their magic, and it has already been mingled with the Bantu people. So now you have the Yoruba people coming in with this added to it. And you have the cultural exchange that the Yoruba people have also had with Africa, with obviously the different countries in Africa. So this is now creating, best word I can, or the best terminology I can think of, besides like a melting pot. I don't want to say that. That sounds a little too high school, right? So besides the term of a melting pot is like a salad bowl, right? So you got a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this. And they are now culturally exchanging amongst each other. Okay. As well as, again, you do still have influence of Portuguese because they are there as well. All right. So this right here is going to be the foundation for all of the religious practices and all of the religious practices that then happen in Brazil, which includes Quimbanda, and almost like the history, not almost like, but the history to um, the religions that then precede Quimbanda. Okay, I said a mouthful, so I just want to make sure that everything is clear in regards to that. Um, and if there's any questions in regards to that, make sure to put it in the chat, not this chat, but in the Discord chat, and we can discuss further. But I want to give y'all like that foundation first. Okay, cool. So, because I want y'all so the goal of this, right, is I really want y'all to walk through this with me, like a movie, painting the picture of what has happened in the past so that y'all can understand the process of how Kimbanda came to. Because once y'all can understand that, then we can get into the practicality of it, and then we can get into Pomodoro, Eshu, all of the fun things, the rituals, etc. But I want y'all to have a good foundation. All right. So with that being said, I'm going to stop for now. As far as the history, because at the next class it's going to be, okay, boom, now everybody has commingled. Now we're going to get into the different terminology and the different practices that are then related to Kimbanda, but not necessarily Kimbanda. So y'all have an understanding of where all of those religions fit in the ATR. When I say the ATR, I mean African traditional religions. Okay. So Again, going forward, all classes will be here because it's just more seamless and smooth for everybody. And yeah, uh, definitely let me know what y'all think about this class. This is part one. So let me know what y'all think about class in that Discord chat, Intro to Kimbanda. If y'all have questions, put it in the chat. And I do want to say before I get y'all out of here that as far as questions in regards to terminology, don't worry about that because what I will be incorporating in the Discord is going to be a index glossary. Give me I want to say by the next class, but it'll probably be up by tomorrow. But I'm going to have an index glossary so that when we discuss these terms, y'all don't got to worry about spelling or what the term means, etc. So it just makes things faster to follow along, and it leaves room for more in-depth questions in the group chat, and not necessarily just kind of taking up space in regards to terminology. Okay. So, all right. I'm going to see y'all Thursday at 8 o'clock right on here. And yeah, let me know what y'all think about class in the chat in Discord.